So you love Civilization and want more? Or maybe you hate Civ and you want something different? Well, today's your day, as I'm going to tell you about the 7 best new Civilization-like 4X strategy building games that are releasing or will still be worth playing in 2024. Could any be a Civilization killer? Let's find out. For a small one before we get into the big hitters, Yield. This is a compact yet complete strategy experience where every choice matters. Rome is crumbling, and you have to choose your favorite king and build your kingdom in the ashes of the Roman Empire. I've had a little explore of this game, and it is supposed to be simple to learn, but difficult to master, but many strategy games say that, and you are supposed to have meaningful choices as you go through these games. However, it is not these large, grand, forever games that take weeks to complete. It's supposed to be more compact, more, maybe not so much pocket-sized, but a bit more focused of a strategic experience. Now, the unique thing here really has to be the visual style. This thing looks like it's been knitted and sewn with love and care, and it feels weirdly like a very cozy art style, considering that you are vying for control of Rome and slaughtering your enemies. But, you know, that's what Yield is all about. Generally, it looks really good, and from what I've seen so far, gameplay is pretty solid, though they're still working on balance and stuff like that. But it could be a very nice alternative, or a little bit of a sidestep if you're waiting for Civ 7 or something like that. Good news is there is a free demo at the time of recording this video, so you can just go ahead and try Yield yourself and see if this is a nice little experience you want to get into. Then, of course, we have to mention Ara, History Untold. Build a nation and lead your people throughout history to the pinnacles of human achievement as you explore new lands, develop arts and culture, conduct diplomacy, and go head-to-head with your rivals to prove that you are the greatest ruler ever known. So this one was announced a little bit ago at this point, and, you know, this one seems to be the most Civilization-like in terms of the upcoming ahistorical 4X strategy kind of games. In this one, it is promising a dynamic living world filled with life and charm and sweeping landscapes. You build your nation across these lands and rule your way, choosing from unique leaders to represent different nations with various playstyles. And importantly, it says that you are meant to be experiencing true simultaneous turns. Every turn, each nation's actions and choices resolve simultaneously, which means that you basically tell your orders, you put down all your orders, you end your turn, and everything runs at the same time. So there are pros and cons to this approach. We've seen this approach a couple times. You know, it does sort of take out the very annoying element in multiplayer where it's whoever clicks first wins, which is very unfair because these turn-based 4X games are meant to be turn-based. It shouldn't require a micro. But also, this simultaneous playout means that sometimes you'd tell a unit to attack another unit, but they told that unit to move, so what happens is the attack doesn't really happen. Which I suppose is maybe a bit more realistic, but also kind of annoying in a different way. I don't know. Which way do you prefer? But anyway, Ara History Untold, I mean, it looks like it's going for that realistic visual approach, and, you know, at first glance, I'm not sure if it can live up and properly compete with Civilization as it stands. However, you know, we've been waiting on Civilization 7 for a long time, and Ara History Untold is most likely going to slip in before that. And we have seen some gameplay at this point, but honestly not all that much. So we're gonna have to see how Ara History Untold unfolds over the next year. Next, we've got Revival Recolonization. Set in a post-apocalyptic version of Earth, Revival is a 4X strategy game where the world and its rules can change at key moments, which is supposed to create a deep and replayable experience. Now, because this is a post-apocalyptic sort of future world, things are kinda different here. It's not quite just ahistorical. You know, you could have sudden weather disasters, to zombie infestations, to bans on certain weapon types. So the whole point of this game is that it's sort of like a Civilization 4X game, but the world and the parameters of the conflicts and the situations are constantly changing, which will force you to change your playstyle. Combat itself here is tactical, taking place in turn-based battles, and generally the setting and the world is kind of interesting. It's not just, you know, post-apocalyptic. There are remnants of modern-day Earth in this in the landscape. So it's sort of interesting to sort of explore this world and see what became of the planet. Now, this one has been in early access since about the middle of 2023 to few but very positive user reviews on Steam. Currently over the 85% mark, so generally this has sort of a niche following at the moment, and it is continuing to develop. They say they mean to be in early access for about 6 months, which should mean an early 2024 release window, but let's face it, they said it depends on player feedback. And whenever a developer says it's going to take 6 months, but it depends on player feedback, it means it's probably going to take a year or more. So if they remotely stick to their release window, Revival Recolonization will release sometime in 2024, but really it depends on your feedback. Hey, now that you're a bit into the list, I'm sure you're enjoying it, so it would be greatly appreciated if you can just like the video. That's super kind of you. Alright, next game. Humankind. I'm sure most of you have heard of this one. This one's already released, and it was sort of the first big Civilization direct competitor, and it's gone very interestingly. Now, if you go to the Steam page, it's gonna say mixed reviews at about 65% positive at the time of recording, and that doesn't quite explain what Humankind is. So Humankind, the way I see it, is that it's sort of looked at Civilization 6 and the Civilization series in general and identified a number of problems. For example, having to re-up trade every 10 turns, or the vast amount of cards that you have to pick from, or, you know, the problem with Doom carpets in late game, or Doom stacks. Humankind sort of looked at all of those problems and identified them and said, okay, how do we solve these problems? And they sort of addressed those problems in some very interesting ways. Combat takes place in sort of a tactical arena separate from the world map, or rather integrated with the world map, but separate. The way trade works is much smoother. Instead of a mass amount of cards to read through and pick from, it's just sort of A/B choices for civic choices. And there's a lot of very interesting ideas here. However, it didn't land as clearly for many people, I think mainly because of how the leader system works. The leaders, they're not famous leaders, they're customized characters which you control. And you don't just play a civilization. Every time you go from one era to another, you can sort of change up your civilization, which gameplay-wise feels very interesting, and it sort of allows you to morph your gameplay through the match, depending on the situation. However, in lore, in world vibes, it feels very weird if you're playing the, you know, Sumerians and then you switch and then suddenly you're the Romans, you know? It feels very weird going from one very defined civilization to another. So it sort of gives the sense that you are kinda building your own unique civilization, but also switching from one established real-world civilization to another, completely different real-world civilization, can feel very jarring. I mean, you could start as ancient Egyptians and end the game as the French, you know? So it sort of feels weird in that sense. Not so much in the gameplay aspect, but in terms of the vibe. You know, and overall, you know, not everyone likes the differences and changes. But honestly speaking, I think the game is just very complicated in terms of how it's been received. So I do recommend you check in and look at Humankind and see what it actually is before deciding whether you like it or not. Because out of those mixed reviews on Steam, it's out of 18,000 user reviews. So a lot of people bought this, a lot of people played it, and a lot of people do like it. I mean, 66% of 18,000 is still a lot of user reviews which recommend the game. But I think it's a love or hate situation. So you decide for yourself on Humankind. Alright, then we can't talk about games like Civilization without talking about the recent Paradox announcement of Millennia. Create your own nation in Millennia, a historical turn-based 4X game that's supposed to challenge your strategic prowess across 10,000 years of history, from the dawn of humanity to our possible near futures. You'll be guiding your nation through history, as mentioned, from the nomadic caveman times to modern tech. You'll customize your nation by adopting unique nation spirits over the course of your game. So will you go the warrior route or the explorer route? Will you be a great Khan or a builder of monuments? And through all this, you'll master deep and interesting economic mechanics, where you can specialize your regions and process resources into other sorts of things. It's a Civilization-like ahistorical 4X game, but this is from Paradox, so there's a few things to talk about here. First of all, Paradox seems to be trying to take on many famous established genres and series right now, and Millennia is their take on the civilization aspect. Maybe they saw how they did with City Skylines killing SimCity, and now they want to kill a bunch of other games. But also, Paradox means it's gonna have a lot of DLC, a lot of expansions, maybe content packs, right? So Millennia will start out as a game, and then you'll have to buy lots of little DLCs to keep it a complete game. And also, just looking at the screenshots right now, it does seem like it's got a number of interesting ideas. It does have a sort of a card system, which honestly I'm not the biggest fan of, but it seems less daunting than what they did in Civ 6. And also, visually, it doesn't give me the best of vibes right now. I mean, it's gone for that sort of realistic look, but it also looks a little maybe bland at this point, but maybe it's just the screenshots and it'll look better in motion. That tends to be the case. Now, the trailer we have right now is, you know, very sparse in terms of any kind of gameplay footage. And this is a more recent announcement, so there's no fixed release window right now, but this will be very interesting to keep an eye on as we go through 2024, because Millennia has the budget and they have the power to take on a big series like Civilization, and if they get in before Civ 7, then they could at least temporarily take the crown, and if anything, that would force Civ 7 to be better, so it's a win-win if Millennia does well. But you know, we can never really see the future. And then, for a game that's already released, but it's continued to get more content, and it's done very well for itself, Old World. This is a historical strategy game where you lead your dynasty over generations of rule against rival kings and queens. You wage massive wars, manage your court and build a dynasty, or you could watch your empire crumble to dust. That is your choice. Now, this initially released in May 2022, but recently, towards the end of 2023, it got a new expansion called Pharaohs of the Nile that added a bunch of new stuff that you might want to check out, all based on Pharaohs of the Nile, of course. And there's a few things here. Mainly, first of all, in terms of your dynasty. You play a certain character and you actually have children. And your character does age and eventually die through events or just old age, which I guess is also an event. And then it passes to the new leader based on, you know, who you have in your court. And, you know, there's really a lot of things here which sort of sidestep how Civilization does things. And it feels almost more like a dynastic adventure game at times. I mean, you have to seek out and recruit famed warriors, philosophers, builders. Characters have different personality archetypes. Characters develop and gain new traits and bonuses and bad qualities over time as well. You can discover artifacts, pursue ambitions, and all of your actions are based on orders, which is a resource that you have to spend, so you can't just do everything all the time. Orders, you know, actually doing things is also a resource to spend. And it does have mod support, which is really nice. Now, when Old World was first announced and revealed, it sort of felt like a kind of more indie take on Civilization, and, you know, everyone sort of thought it would be a nice little extra thing, but it's come a long way. And if you haven't tried Old World, it is something I can recommend. Currently on Steam, it's got a couple thousand very positive user reviews at 80+% positive, and it's one of those games which I think is sort of putting pressure on the Civilization series, because it again is sort of like Humankind, where it looked at the problems of the genre and tried to do it in a different and better way. And some things just sort of feel different, some things feel better, some things feel a little odd, but maybe it just takes some getting used to. So, you know, have a look at Old World. It looks great, it plays really well, and a lot of people like it. So this might be the Civilization alternative you want to play in 2024. Okay, then I want to mention a little game that is actually very interesting, but it is much less than the traditional Civilization-like game. It's Ozymandias, Bronze Age Empire Sim. Here you build an empire in a single sitting. All the strategy of classic 4Xs, but it's a faster format, which works really well in multiplayer because a game tends to be like an hour long. Now, having played Ozymandias, a lot of people do really like it. On Steam, it released towards the end of 2022, and it's continuing to get very positive reviews at 90+% positive. And honestly, having gone back to play Incunabula, the 80s 4X game that's based on the 1980s Civilization board game that has nothing to do with Sid Meier. That Civilization board game and Incunabula sort of play like this, kind of-ish. It's hard to put into words how Ozymandias does actually play out, but it is sort of more fast-paced. It is sort of almost puzzle-like, but also still really strategic, and in terms of how you utilize your resources and expand your empire, there clearly is a skill-based element to it, because you can consistently win if you know what you're doing. And it is sort of in this competitive multiplayer setup, though there is single player and you can fight the AI, which does promise to not cheat. So I know this isn't going to be replacing your hunger for a Civilization-like kind of game, but if you're into Civilization, I feel like you would kinda be into Ozymandias as well. At least maybe if you're like on the go, or you just want to have quick games with friends, which can be done much quicker, then this might be something that's more convenient for you right now. Okay, and as a bonus, I want to mention Freeciv. Now, if you haven't heard, Freeciv is a free and open source empire building strategy game inspired by the history of human civilization. I'm gonna be honest, it sort of feels like a moderned up Civ 2, if anything. But it is sort of its own thing, and it's open source, so it's constantly in development. And if you've heard of it before but not really jumped into it, or sort of thought it was kind of underdeveloped, it's been coming a long way, and it's getting regular updates. And I did try jump into it for a little bit and played around with it, and it feels like a Civ game. The UI is a little under-designed, and, you know, it is still kind of technical, but the gameplay visuals are decent. And if you're a fan of Civ 2 or even Civ 3, this one sort of gives that vibe. And because it's got an active community, and it's always changing and it's always getting better, you know, if you want to just try it out, I can highly recommend it. It's free, just go try it, because it's free Civ. Especially if you are a Civ 1 or Civ 2 player, then I think this is going to be more in your wheelhouse in terms of your expectations. So I can highly recommend checking out Freeciv, if for nothing else, an interesting experience. And it's one of those open source projects which you can come back every 6 months or just check back in on it every year and then see how it's doing, because it does change up quite a bit. And of course, in this list, I'm gonna have to talk about Civilization 7. Not that it's been announced when it's releasing or even been revealed. All we really truly know about Civilization 7 is that it is in development. But, you know, we can only guess that it'll release in 2024. Firaxis does tend to like short announcements to release windows. I'm actually surprised they announced that they're producing Civilization 7 officially. Of course, we knew, But, you know, with Civ 6, they sort of announced it in, March, and then they released it by October. So I have to talk about it here, because if they are releasing in 2024, they're gonna announce it and release it probably within a 6-month window, so it's hard to catch. But we really don't know all that much. Like, how are they going to take the lessons of Civ 6 and move forward? And how are they going to respond to all of these new competitors? With Ara, History Untold, and Millennia both on the way, games like Humankind and Old World having not just released, actually sort of taking up a chunk of the 4X ahistorical space. It's been a long time since Civilization has had this much competition, and maybe not ever. So what is Civilization going to do to make sure Civilization 7 keeps the crown? Now, with Civ 6, we can see that they did take some ideas from some of their competitors. The creators of Humankind earlier produced Endless Legend. The idea of districts sort of came from there, and they implemented that into Civ 6. How about art style? The Civ 6 art style got a bit controversial, everyone calling it cartoony or designed for children. I think it's gone down okay, but a lot of people, I'm sure, are hungering for that realistic art style, hence how many of these competitors are going the realistic route. Will Civilization 7 go the realistic route and try to be better than these competing games, or will they go in a completely different art style? There's so many questions that we have in our minds, and honestly, they're very difficult to answer. Who knows what the best approach is? What would go down well with the Civilization community? Everything is on the line for Sid Meier's Civilization, because if Civ 7 does not perform, then any of these competing games could just take the crown and potentially kill Civilization for a long time. Paradox has done it before, I'm sure they'd love to do it again, but will Firaxis let them? Well, maybe if you go ahead and build the Oracle, we'll know. Alright, there you have it. Press the like button and get games using the GOG referral link below to support videos like this one. You know, just click the link and buy any game. It really does help. And thank you to all the patrons and YouTube members who really support this channel and keeping videos like these being made. Join if you want your name on future videos. If you want to stay in the know for another genre, go to the next list video linked on screen, as I'm sure rulers of civilization like yourself would not want to miss all the other strategy and 4X games in the other lists. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you there.